Welcome, Model FAs. David DeCelle here, CEO of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And I'm very excited to bring to you our guest today, Cary Carbonaro, who was introduced to us by Bill Cates, who was a previous guest on our show. And Cary is an award-winning financial advisor, author, speaker, and female advocate. And she has a wildly cool story that I'm excited to unpack with all of you today. But with that said, Cary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. So happy to be here.
Well, let's rock. So I guess for our listeners, let's help set the stage. How'd you get into the business at the beginning and walk us through a little bit of your journey?
Sure. So I always knew I wanted to do something with money because my dad was a money guy. He was worked for JP Morgan Chase his entire career. And we bonded. I was the oldest child, and we bonded over money instead of sports. So he used to take me to take your daughter to work day before there was a take your daughter to work day. So we're going way back. And I loved it. And every Christmas Eve, I used to spend with him the whole day in the office. And it was like, oh, Christmas Eve was amazing because it was, I get to go to the office and I get presents. So it was totally amazing. And we also did like a lot of other amazing things together that we bonded over. Like he took me to foreclosure auctions. He took me to Straight Talk with the Dolans, which again, we're going way back to the 80s here. I don't even know if they're still alive, but they were a couple that talked about financial literacy together and went around and did the speaker circuit. So it was for me, I just thought everybody learned about money and I thought everybody knew about money. And when I got to college and nobody knew anything, and I was like doing my friends' budgets for fun to try to find them, beer money or whatever, I was like, wow, like this is I really like doing this. Like I would do this without getting paid. And then when I found out I could actually do this for a living and get paid, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So my first job out of college was for JP Morgan Chase. I was in the management training program. Then I went to school at night and I honed my skills with clients, working one-on-one in the branches and on the private banking side. Then after that, I got my MBA in marketing, which they paid for. And I went to work for Citibank after I graduated, and I spent some time at Citibank. I really wanted to learn about FICO scores and all that stuff because that was when it was a black box and nobody knew anything. And I really wanted to get the inside track of how are these credit scores, how do they work? So I had to like go work there to figure it out. And then after that, I worked for Lord Abbett Mutual Funds in the marketing department. And that was fantastic. Great, great career move for me. After that is when I wound up relocating to Florida and starting my own practice from scratch on the RIA side. So it was kind of an evolution, but my early days were one-on-one with clients, then in the marketing division, then started my practice in about 2002. So way back when.
So it's interesting. But actually, by the time this is released, I may have a baby girl. My
Yes.
wife is due September 1st. We're recording this July 25th. And that's one thing that I've been excited about is just whether it's a boy or a girl. And we found out it's a girl, but early on, whether it was a boy or a girl, I was like, I want to take them under my wing, expose them to, because unlike you, I was the person that needed help with their budget early on because I wasn't brought up or exposed, to money or how to manage it or really anything about it. Like one memory that I have from way back when, and this held true all the way through probably my first 6 or 7 years of my professional career, where I would make money and I would spend all that money. Because as a kid, my parents wouldn't give me $20 to go to the movies. I would have to earn $20 and then I'd go to the movies and spend that $20. Right. So it was like ingrained in me at a young age to just spend 100% of what I made. So I'm curious to know, like, did your dad sort of and this is a selfish question for me as a future father, did your dad, if you remember, like just kind of offer you to tag along with some of these things? Did he kind of pull you in and sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, like force you into it? Because it seems like it was a good
Oh, no.
experience. I'm looking from my perspective as a future dad, like how do I get my daughter, excited to, come alongside me in some of the stuff that I'm doing?
Well, so it's so interesting because for me, first of all, I love my dad more than anything in the world. And like getting to spend time with him was amazing for me. And then having him teach me what everything he knows about money and business at a very young age was such a gift. And every time I talk about it, people are like, "You have no idea how lucky you are." And I said, "Yes, I do. I know how lucky I am." I knew about compounding interest, the time value of money, the importance of saving, starting your 401k as soon as possible, putting money away in an IRA for your first job when you're, as young as possible. So like I had all of these gifts. I also even had no college debt because he gave me the choice of, taking out a loan or debt if I went to an Ivy League school or paying 100% if I went to a state school. And I was like, why would anybody want to take on debt? Like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. I'll go to the state school. So, all those lessons. So, anyway, for me, it was all fun, all good. And no, he definitely did not have to drag me along.
Now, you said you started doing financial planning and opened your own practice. Did I catch that right in 2002?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So walk us through what that was like, because previous to that, JP Morgan, Citibank, call it the banking channels. And
Hmm.
now you're, in, call it freedom land, right? You have your own practice. You don't have, the sort of benefits and drawbacks. You don't have the rigidity of being a part of a big institution, but you also don't have the credibility or the name backing you any longer like you did at those institutions. So what was that like, transitioning from those large organizations to then building your own thing?
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of people really feel like the brand name is why people buy from them. And I believe that people are with me because of me. And I've proven that for my entire career that people are here because of me versus the brand name because I didn't have a brand name. And actually, almost no RIAs have brand names. So it's very interesting in our world. Your name and your brand is more important than your firm's. And I've been saying that for a lot of years. And it's absolutely true because clients come to me because of me and what I bring to the table and what I offer and my education and my knowledge and my expertise and my empathy and all that stuff. So they're with me because of me, not because of the firm. And of course, when I got there and started my own firm from scratch with no brand and no name, and I was in Florida at the time, so I had moved from the Northeast to Florida, from New York to Florida. But I also was still actually, it's a long story, but I was also still in New York. So I split my time between Florida and New York for about 20 years. And so I was living in both states with Florida as my primary for over 20 years. So I was taking clients in both locations. And for me, it's interesting because I am a marketer first and a CFP second. I just think about marketing. And so I have marketed my way and my brand and myself and my name and my expertise, and that's how I've gotten clients. So it's very different than most people because most people are spending money to acquire clients. And I remember I was at a dinner recently where another financial planner was bragging that his acquisition cost was less than $1,000 a person and bragging because he says, oh, the average is like $5,000 a person. And I'm like, I literally fell off my chair. And he was like, what's your acquisition cost? And I'm like, zero. And he's like, I don't believe you. And I said, I don't pay anything. I've never paid anything. I don't pay for marketing. I don't pay for client acquisition. I just do what I do. And so I do PR, I do social media, both of which are free. And I hold myself out and I write and I speak and I do all the things that I've been doing my whole career. And that's what's gotten me every single client.
So let's walk through that. So marketing can be sort of an amorphous word, and it can mean a
Right.
bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, and it can, you know, be tough to grasp.
Mhm.
So walk us through, like, what are you doing as it relates to PR? What are you doing as it relates to social media? Like, what are some of the things that fall under your personal marketing umbrella?
Sure. So, well, I have my own website at carycarbonaro.com. Also don't pay for that one because it's pretty much all I do it myself and I have somebody who does some graphics for me. But other than that, like that is like a DIY type thing. Obviously it has to be compliance approved and all of that. But so for example, that has all my speaking, all my writing, all my quotes, all my TV appearances, all of that stuff is in that like one spot. And then I use LinkedIn, I use Facebook, I use Instagram, I sort of use X. I don't know. I mean, I lost my audience there when I had a 4-year hiatus, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But anyway, so if I look at those three, and let's say LinkedIn being the number one, especially for professional use, and I have a lot of stuff on my LinkedIn. I have videos, I have thought leadership pieces, I have posts, pictures, everything about what I'm doing, and I'm constantly feeding it. And actually, I have to limit myself to 2 posts a week because otherwise I feel like it's too much and I'm overexposed. So at this moment in time, I'm actually 70 posts behind. That's how much stuff I have.
Or 70 posts ahead in the queue. So you're not scrambling the week of trying to put something out there. What type of clients do you work with?
So my client base is predominantly women. So I have about 80% women and 20% couples. And out of those couples, a majority of those couples, the woman is the breadwinner. I have a very few number where the man is the breadwinner. But in those cases, the man actually had said to me, I would like to hire you for when I pass and you'll take care of my wife. So it's very opposite of what a traditional advisor is because it's usually backwards. And also my clients, my average client, I have very high earners. So I don't know, breadwinning women. So a lot of my clients make $1 million a year as a woman. So very, very, successful women. Average net worth of $5 million and average investable assets of $3 million.
And so it's no secret that sort of two things come to mind. It's no secret that you're a woman. No
Mhm.
secret that this industry barely has any women in it when you juxtapose it against the dudes in the industry. And when I introduced you at the beginning of the show, part of your bio is female advocate.
Mhm.
And what I'm curious to learn about there is, are you a female advocate predominantly for other female advisors, for your female clients, for both? Like, how do you advocate for women in this industry and within your book of business?
So definitely all of the above, for a lot of reasons. It's interesting because there's this book called The One Thing, and you look back on your life and you look at the threads in your life of what sticks out the most, of what has been like a theme in your life. And me being a female advocate has been there my entire life. So even when I was in college, I started a sorority for women to founding president of a sorority to create a safe place for women when I was in college, and because there wasn't a strong, and I created pretty much the whole Greek life system with sororities at my college after after founding it. It created a whole entire, they had to get a Panhellenic system, like all of this stuff, just because I created this one sorority, and then it mushroomed into this whole other thing. But so it's literally been the theme of my life. And so when I talk about helping women within my profession, bringing women into the profession, changing the profession, and then helping female clients within the profession, it's all of the above. It's all about changing the narrative and making it female, changing the profession to make it female friendly. So, for example, like I'll go back to United Capital when I was at United Capital. So, United Capital, I wrote a business case study, white paper, presented it to Joe Duran and said, hey, this is why we need money to start women's leadership at United Capital, because women are the future of wealth management. We're using the McKinsey study that my book is based on. And this is why we need to help and bring more women into the profession. And this is why. And anyway, and I got a lot of money to start and run women's leadership at United Capital. So, we were making some really great strides there. And now I'm actually doing it at my current firm. At my current firm, I'm leading a women's initiative. I'm doing a mentorship program that I brought in for women in the industry. And then I do a ton of stuff with mentees, and I work with the CFP board and also the Center for Financial Planning, which is the nonprofit arm of the CFP board, which is bringing more women into the profession. And I've done a ton of stuff like the Girl Scout, going to the annual Girl Scout conference and planting seeds about our profession with, thousands and thousands of girls age 5 through 18, because none of them even know what a CFP is. They know and they don't even know what a financial planner is either, but, they know what an attorney is, they know what a CPA is, they know what a doctor is, they don't know what we are. So that's another whole issue. I also work with Rock the Street Wall Street. I work with WLA, which is Women's Leadership Alliance out of St. Petersburg, which is also a mentorship program for women in the industry. And I also put my money where my mouth is, and I went to SUNY Cortland undergraduate, and I have a named scholarship for women in business at that school.
Well, it's not smoke and mirrors. You're actually a female advocate, which is great. Let's put the cherry on top while we're on this topic. Talk to us about your book, because I'm pretty sure that that has a tilt towards this conversation.
100%. So this book is called Women in Wealth, A Playbook to Empower Clients and Unlock Their Fortune. It was published by Wiley. It came out, I guess, about three months ago. And it was the great news. It was incredibly well received. The reviews are incredible. The sales are great. And it was number one new release in wealth management, number one in business finance, and number one in economics when it came out. So I have great numbers which I'm super happy about, because I didn't know what to expect, because it's technically an industry book. So it's a book for the industry to get ready for the great wealth transfer that's coming upon us, that is 4.5 short years away. Now, McKinsey came out with this study literally a decade ago. So 15 years before the great wealth transfer, McKinsey came out with these numbers that women are going to control 2/3 of the nation's wealth by 2030. So here we are now, 4.5 years away, and that's $30 trillion, is the same GDP as the United States. Currently, women control 1/3 of the nation's wealth, so going to double. And then if you go out even further, Cerulli came out in the beginning of 2025, so it's not in my book because my book was already finished by then, saying that by 2048, the numbers are 57 trillion that women are going to control. So the numbers are just mind-boggling of how much money is going to be transferred to women. Are you going to ask me why?
Why?
I was going to just tell you, but So everyone always asks me that. So it's a confluence of a lot of different factors happening at once. One is baby boomers dying and transferring wealth to their children. Now, why more women than men? Because because women live longer.
Hmm.
And the longevity factor is really coming into play here. Women live on average 7 to 12 years longer than men. So that means women are getting the money from their parents. They're also inheriting their money from their spouses when they die. We also have the gray divorce trend, which women over 50 getting divorced and also getting piles of money from their spouses at an earlier time. But it's not just that, because that's what some people think. Because in our industry in general, they look at women in those two categories, divorced or widowed. But guess what? There's a multitude of other things that women are. I have literally a circle of life in my book on all the other life cycles of women. And the other ones are that those breadwinning women that I was just talking about that I cater to in my practice. And guess what? For the first time ever in history, I mean, my book goes into history, the history of women in money and the history of female breadwinners. And, you go back to 1950, which is not that long ago, and nobody was a women breadwinner, except if you were widowed or divorced or had to work, but in general, there was no CEO women, there was no huge women breadwinners, if they were, it was by accident, like a Lily Pulitzer in the 60s who, came up with her clothes and, was doing it just for fun. So it was kind of like by happenstance. Now, by 2030, women are going to be for the first time out earning men in the United States, which is incredible. Then you also have the other trend of women starting businesses more than men. So female entrepreneurship is just exploding. And there's a million reasons for that too. But it's all good stuff.
And so it seems like you've not only in your book that is for, if I understood correctly, for our industry to empower our industry to serve those people, but seems like also you've positioned yourself and your business in such a way to capture a lot of that wealth as it transitions based on the way you've branded yourself, the way you've marketed yourself, the content that you put out. So it's sort of like a proactive in that you're putting that content out, but a little bit of a waiting game as this transitions. You probably have a lot of stuff, kind of on the outskirts that will land here shortly.
Well, it's funny because I always say when I speak at all the industry conferences, hey guys, we know that stat that 70 to 90% of women leave their advisors when the spouse dies. That has not changed in decades. And I've had men say to me, "Well, I haven't lost any clients yet." And I said, well, the answer is yet.
Right.
So what is that? And I actually had somebody say to me, "Well, I know I will, but I'll deal with it when it gets here." And I'm like, "Guess what? It's too late by that time. If you haven't done anything before she leaves or before the spouse dies, you're not keeping her. And guess who's getting her? Me."
So on that note, because the industry is predominantly male,
Yes,
um,
80%,
I
80, 75, 80.
what I don't think that you're saying, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but what I don't think that you're saying is that women need to work with women. Male advisors can still work with women, but the discrepancy here is that, it's not always that the male advisor is meeting with both spouses. Oftentimes it's the male spouse. So beyond just the answer of like, well, meet with the wife too, like what are some things that the average advisor can do to build a relationship with the female spouse if they don't currently have one, with the caveat that maybe they also don't want to attend the meeting or it's not of interest, or is that being assumptive? Like, help me understand how men can also be on the receiving end of the transfer of wealth,
Yep.
and what they can do to lay the groundwork today to be in a position to do so.
Yes. Well, so literally, I wrote 400 pages to answer that question. So it's not an easy
What's the
answer.
Spark Notes version?
So, well, it's interesting because what happens with men is, and believe me, I had a guy, great male financial advisor who did a review of the book, and he actually said, Cary is not saying anything men are bad and women are great. Like it's not that at all. It's literally Carrie's giving you the keys to the kingdom. So read this book and then you'll have your answers. But the problem is sometimes literally men don't know what they don't know. It's a complete blind spot. They literally don't know what they're doing wrong or if they're doing anything wrong at all. They just don't know. So one first thing I would say is do you have any females on your staff? Do you have any female financial advisors? And the answer in most cases is no, or I'm trying, or I want one, but I can't find them. So that's one thing because a woman feels usually more comfortable when there's a woman in the room, and sometimes they can get more information out of them and draw them in more. Second, you might be using jargon that is over her head or her eyes are glazing over and you're talking about performance numbers and she doesn't care and you're losing her. And again, you might not know because you're having the conversation with the man and he's totally into it and you guys are on the same wavelength and she is completely left out. I had a story where, and I get stories from everybody because everybody tells me their stories, where they're in the middle of a meeting and a woman picks up a magazine off the desk and starts reading the magazine in the middle of the meeting. Talk about being completely disengaged.
Right.
She's completely disengaged. And in that case I said, I hope you stopped her, put the magazine down and started to talk directly to that woman. She has to be heard, felt, seen. She has different opinions of money than men. Men, they are comfortable talking about performance, comfortable about the sports analogies, comfortable about beating the S&P 500. None of that resonates with a woman. A woman wants to know, am I going to be okay? Can I get a second home? Are my kids going to be okay? Am I going to be a bag lady? Are you addressing the bag lady fear? I talk about that a lot in the book. More than 50% of women have the bag lady fear. I even talk about in the book, which freaks men out, but it's really important, menopause as a topic of conversation because it is a major life event for women that sometimes changes a lot of different things in their life. Women quit their jobs. They have, start second careers or different acts or, just a lot of different things that are going on in their lives there. And so are you addressing that? Are you understanding her? Are you listening to her? Are you speaking her language? So one thing I do is I had a webinar for through the CFP board called Serving Women Clients Effectively. And I did it with my friend Elaine King. We talked a lot about the things in my book. And one of the things we talked about was, the analogies for women are different than the analogies for men, which are, usually the sports analogies. And I'm sure some women like sports, but in general, our analogies are better because they speak to women more. So I have one where I compare shoes to asset classes and women love it. And my girlfriend who's on the call, she compares spices to asset classes or recipes to asset classes. And also women get it. So there's also a ton of blind spots. There is what's called implicit or unconscious bias. I have a whole chapter on it in my book. And what happens with that is, again, you don't know what you don't know. So in the book, there's a quiz. It's a Harvard Business Review quiz about uncovering your blind spots and showing up where there's implicit bias that you don't know that you don't know. So that's another thing that you can do. There's also in the book, there's a quiz. It's how female friendly is your practice? It's a 20-question quiz and also uncovers the blind spots that you might have in there. And it's not necessarily unconscious bias, that's something separate, but about the fact that women take longer and women like to have collaboration and women like to have bring in other outside parties, and women like to have separate meetings and just things like that. So there's a lot involved to this. Also, how are you speaking to them? How are you writing to them? What does your marketing look like? There's a lot involved. It's not just one little thing. It's probably 100 things, but it's a great place to start. Just start with some of them.
So when I think of, and that's all very helpful, but when I think of like putting myself in one of these advisors' shoes, talking about things like menopause or the shoe analogy or the recipe analogy, that makes me feel uncomfortable. It almost makes me feel like I'd be like trying too hard, and I would rather sort of say, I'm bringing on a female advisor that can have these conversations and not try to put myself in their shoes. Is that a normal feeling for me to have as I kind of, explain this hypothetical, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I believe it is. And so what's so interesting is how you just felt uncomfortable. That's how the woman feels in almost every
Mm,
financial planning meeting. It's why women say, I don't like this. There's also a great stat in my book from Harvard Business Review that says financial services is the least sympathetic industry to women and the one that has the most to gain if they get it right.
interesting.
I know. It's literally, I feel like it's so funny because to me, it's unbelievable to me because it's $1 trillion opportunity that is literally here on a silver platter and nobody's grabbing it because everybody wants to do what they did in the past.
Now, throughout your career, because this doesn't seem like something that you've been passionate about, for the last couple of years, but for your entire career, in
Mhm.
terms of women, female advocacy, have you, with all the different organizations you've been a part of, or what the platforms that you've built your business on, all those sort of scenarios, would you say that you felt supported and heard every step of the way, or were there ever any instances where you felt dismissed or not taken seriously with this side of what you're passionate about?
Oh, yes. And I write about it in chapter 1 of my book. It's actually, I put it in my story and I talk about, you know, a couple of two horrible things that happened in my life. And, everybody has their ups and downs, and it's how you recover from them that, makes you successful, right? And so I talk about my first situation, which is not related to my business, so to speak, but it was related to my life where I was married to Mr. Wrong and what that did to me and how much that derailed my life and my career and everything that happened to me around that. And so actually after I got out of that is when I wrote my first book, The Money Queen's Guide for Women Who Want to Build Wealth and Banish Fear, because I really wanted to share my story and my clients' stories and what I've seen on successes and failures with an audience, which was, the general public. And I talked about what you do in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to be successful with financial literacy for women. So that was my first book. So now to answer the second question is, where have I not been supported? So my firm, United Capital, which I was a partner of, and I was there from 2012 to 2019, was a very great firm for me. Excellent, very supported, very female friendly, making great strides, doing great things, using behavioral finance to help women. By the way, that's another tip. Women love behavioral finance. And if you're not using it, you should. But anyway, we got sold with, I had no say in the matter, even as a partner. None of us really did. But we got sold to Goldman Sachs. And it was an absolute disaster for me, especially. But in general, it was a disaster, period. Like, it was a disaster every which way but loose, and so I say they should study the business case, like in business school, of what not to do and everything that went wrong. That's how bad it was. And so, they bought it for 750 million. They sold it for 100 million. So pennies on the dollar. They took a
Wow.
$650 million loss, and yeah, and ruined lots of lives. But mine was one of them. And I think mine was pretty extreme. My case was very extreme. So I got there and I, already had a brand, already had a name, already had a book, already had a following, already had, influence and social media and TV and all that stuff. And I got there, and from the minute I walked in the door, they told me, sit down, shut up, babysit your clients, and, you're never going on TV again. You're never going on social media again. You can't have an opinion. You can't speak. You can't write. You can't do anything. You can babysit your clients, is pretty much what they told me. And I was like, what? Like, I literally could not even believe what was happening to me. I mean, I felt like my arms were cut off, my legs were cut off, and there was a gag around my mouth. And I was like, how am I going to get clients? Like, I get clients from speaking and doing what I do and being who I am. And like, I am like, what you see is what you get. Like, there's no difference between me personally and me business. It's the same person. Everything's the same. And this is my life's work and my life's passion. So I literally could not even get out of bed in the morning. I didn't know what to do. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get out of my contract with an attorney, failed miserably, tried to get my business back, tried to pay them. I tried to write them a check to get my business back and walk away, and they reneged on me. So I was the only woman. I was the only one they said no to. All the guys got to buy their businesses back. Yeah. It was an incredibly soul-crushing experience for me. Now, I know this is not everybody's experience. I'm not saying that Goldman is horrible for everybody. I'm just saying it was horrible for me. And this is my experience.
Well, it sounds it. Especially it's disheartening to hear that you were getting, which is a weird word to use, but you were getting special treatment compared to some of the other guys that wanted to write a check and get out of it, and they were allowing that, but they weren't allowing that for you. I don't understand the logic behind it or what their reasoning could have been. It just seems very mess. I want to say the F word, but very messed up that that's was happening.
Well, the person who came back to me literally said, and I quote, Goldman has lost the taste for these deals. And that was it.
Interesting. Well, on a more
Yeah.
as we start wrapping up here to end on sort of a more positive note, what's business and life like today? Because I imagine you're on the other side of that transaction.
Yes.
So let's put a cherry on top of this conversation.
Yes. Well, it was actually not easy. I will have to preface it with um, the Goldman fiasco. I lost over 4 years of my life and my career with that. Because what happened was when we went from from United to Goldman, I was stuck there for 3 years. Then I had to quit and run out my non-compete. Then I wound up at the wrong firm on the other side of the transaction because nobody wanted me because everybody thought I was getting sued by Goldman. So then I wound up at the wrong firm, which was another disaster. And then I said, I'm either going to retire or I'm going to move my clients again. So I moved my clients 4 times in 5 years.
Jeez.
I know.
What was your attrition, if any?
I kept everybody.
Hell yeah. Well, it goes to show that what you said at the beginning, they don't do business with JP Morgan or Citibank. They do business with you. So it's cool to see
Right.
that conversation come full circle.
Exactly, exactly. And so I say that all the time. And if, anytime I say that, people literally fall off their chair because how is that even possible? And believe me, it was not a choice. None of it was a choice. I never chose to go to Goldman. I mean, I had to get out of Goldman. And then I finally chose to go where I am today. So what I was looking for in my final stop was what I had at United Capital. I wanted a large, national RIA that was growing with a strong leadership, PE backed. So, they have money. And so that's what I got. And so I'm at Ashton Thomas now. They're very supportive of me. They believe in my mission. They support, as a matter of fact, they keep putting me in for awards with investment news and I keep winning. So, that's interesting. I would have never even put myself in. I just won DE&I Trailblazer of the Year for 2025 for investment news, which is interesting because I don't consider women DE&I. I consider it a business opportunity, but it's okay. I accepted the award.
Right. There you go.
But yeah, no, things are great. Everything's working on all cylinders now. Probably my only issue is that I need more staff, but that's not really a big problem.
Yeah, it's solvable. But before we wrap up, Carrie, one of the questions that I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. And this is a book that I read every year. I'm in the midst of rereading it now, mid-year, Think and Grow Rich. It is a classic. It is a staple. It is timeless, in my opinion. But why did you pick that book of all the books that are out there?
Oh, it's my absolute favorite. I give it to everybody who graduates high school or college. It's all about the mindset. It's literally about changing your mind around money. And if you follow those incredible principles, you're going to be rich. It's literally inevitable. It's just a matter of when. And so, who doesn't want to be rich, right? Everybody wants to be rich. Or I always say, who doesn't want more money? Because everybody wants more money too, because rich is a state of mind or,
Hmm.
you know, rich is different to every person, right? But freedom and having more money or having money to me, I always say freedom is the ability to make more from your portfolio or investments than your day job. That's real freedom.
I like that. And yeah, Think and Grow Rich, I'm a I'm a product of that book and everything going on in my life personally and professionally. And um, where I think that they could ultimately change their title to a degree is rather than think and grow rich, think, take action, and grow rich. And inside the book, of course, it talks about taking the appropriate action. But um, there is a lot of power in the idea of first you have to believe and think that it's possible, and then God, the universe, whatever you believe in,
Right.
puts the right people in your life at the right time to help that seed grow that was planted in your mind way back when. It's such a good book. Such a good
It
book.
is. It's so classic and it's really old, but it doesn't matter.
It's timeless. It's
Yeah.
timeless. So, well, Carrie, I appreciate your time today for everyone tuning in. I appreciate your time and attention. But, Carrie, before we sign off, if people want to follow along with you and all the stuff that you have going on, if they want to check out the book, where can they find you?
Sure. So I'm so easy to find. I'm the only Cary Carbonaro in the universe. So you can find me carycarbonaro.com. You can find me Cary Carbonaro at LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, sorry, X, whatever, Instagram. The book you can get from Amazon, from Barnes and Noble, from any of the, independent booksellers. It's very, very simple to find. It's Wiley. Um,
Publishing.
Wiley published Women in Wealth, a playbook to empower clients and unlock their fortune.
Love it. Well, Carrie, again, thank you for the time. Thank you for dealing with a reschedule previous to this as my construction project at the house went a little bit over. I'm glad we were able to finally get this done.
Me too. Thank you so much.